And we are live. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever it is you are in the world, and welcome to another edition of Living World of Darkness. Our scene finds us smack dab in the middle of the mage venue. After an excitable 48 hours for the orphan by the name of Neon, she's been, well, mulling quite a few things over in her head. She's mulling quite a few things over her head in general ever since her stay within the chamber that compressed time for her and helped rid her of the condition that a certain gangrel put upon her. Chief among those is where she's going, where she is now, where she fits into the grand scheme of the wheel. And so, after an excitable morning a day ago, she decided that it was time to head over to the Thanatos Chantry and stay in the room afforded to her there while she went back and forth from the library. As it would happen, she finds the door to the now infamous meeting room open, and she peeks her head inside to see if there's anyone in there.
As usual, the receptionist that Maggie has come to know and love, and even recognized by the name Janine, is sitting there and typing on the computer. She doesn't even seem to consider it a particularly notable experience when Maggie comes to visit.
She takes a moment and stops in front of the desk with a curt smile. It's warm out there today, Janine.
Oh yeah? I haven't gotten a chance to go outside yet. A lot of, she taps like a big ass stack of paperwork.
I see. Do you know if Rose is in her office or not?
She'll lean over to her little buzzer thing. Rose, it's Miss Keller. After another fairly muffled voice comes through, she'll nod. Yep, looks like she's in today.
Be alright if I go in and talk to her for a bit?
Go right ahead.
Smiles and she gives a kind of a wave before making her way down the hallway. Goes to the third door on the left and knocks on it before she turns the knob to open it.
She'll get the muffled noise of come on in through the wood of the door.
And Maggie steps in, offers a little bit of a bow with her head. I hope I'm not interrupting.
Not at the moment. I just finished my meditations for the morning. How are you?
That is an interesting question. One that I don't have a solid answer for. Things have been odd the past couple days. Socially odd, not phenomenon-wise.
Oh, what's been going on?
And she'll gesture to a seat. Do you mind if I sit down?
Go right ahead.
Maggie takes a seat and reaches into her bag and pulls out a couple of leather-bound books that she borrowed from the library and sets them on the table. Uh, these are actually pretty informative. A nice few novels written in Hindi. Uh, I don't know where to begin. It's it's been really strange coming out of the isolation. It had its lasting effects, so to speak. I find it hard to be in a room by myself. I find it even harder to keep whispers in my head quiet.
I see. How have you been managing to cope with those things?
Meditation at times, painting, keeping my mind busy. Other times, indulging in conversation with them. They've The voices are of two identities that I assumed when practicing with life magic. One by the name of Tara, one by the name of Harper. They um, they made it a bit easier to cope with being alone, but they didn't go away.
Let's see. What have they been telling you?
Mostly commentary. Harper Harper has a mindset that's very lofty. I guess is the best way to describe it. She acts like a hedonist, speaks like one, but she has a very high opinion of herself, and she doesn't view us necessarily as human anymore. Tara, on the other hand, is compassionate, and she's been telling me about the great many faults that I have and things I need to answer for when it comes to how I practiced my craft beforehand, before all this.
Is there one that you believe more than the other?
Sometimes I go both ways. It's hard to differentiate between the two, or separate myself from the two, I should say. There's a part of me that does believe that intrinsically we're not people like we used to be. At the same time, there's a part of me that also feels that what will we be without the guiding principles we once had as normal people?
She nods. It's definitely a balance to keep in the back of your mind. To forget the importance of humanity and your own human roots leads to megalomania, leads to many of the fallen ones. However, it's equally dangerous to never branch out and expand. I'd imagine when you woke up, you were told that you have a purpose, right?
I was. It was just me and my avatar for the longest time.
Did she not give you a purpose, a mission, a demand in return for your power?
She did
What did she ask?
something fairly self serving to put up a fight against corrupt cops, police abuses, that sort of thing. Sort of thing that I've told you about at nauseum, about how I woke up.
She nods. It sounds to me like when you woke up, the lack of formal training you received may have not prepared you for anything greater. So your avatar started in narrow terms.
Since my incident at the hospital, she hasn't said much. Not that I've sought her out, though. She kind of gives herself a bit of a shrug. What has been present with other people saying, I I used to make snap judgments about how I used my magic. Most notably, the power over the mind.
Mm-hmm.
I've taken agency away from people, exploited weaknesses. Times I thought I had to, other times because I didn't have all the information I needed. And I didn't stop to think about consequences or even morality.
I understand how that could have been difficult for somebody who's self awakened. The lack of structure.
I have a chantry mate who, upon first meeting him, I thought he was a gray face, and I threw my ability over him like a blanket, and I forced him to walk out into the middle of traffic.
She sort of frowns a bit. Would have been a dangerous mistake to make had he not lived.
Considering he was part of the Akashic Brotherhood originally, that could have started a very big problem for me.
She nods.
Who knows, possibly even for the Chantry at that point I was part of. The other one was a newly awakened mage. She was chaotic. She was in a fluster. She had been attacked by a leech. And I tried to explain things to her. She was belligerent, and she wouldn't stay put. She wanted to go back out there with her newly awakened powers. And I used my power to keep her in one place until there was someone that could talk to her and explain things better than I could.
And how did that work?
Well, she hates me now. She might have hated me always. She's not particularly keen on anybody that I know of. But I thought I was doing what needed to be done to follow the protocols to keep her from breaking them. All it's brought me is nothing but regret, sorrow, and hardship, especially when it comes to her.
Like any other tool that we've been given, there are times in which to use magic and times in which to rely on your own persuasive abilities. There are many among us who have extremely strong opinions about robbing another of their autonomy. Even among us, we consider one's thread to be their own responsibility, whether they're already woven to do some great wrong or not.
And if they endanger our community as a whole,
That information would have been made privy to us, and we would have snipped the thread before it could begin fraying others.
that's where I find conflict. I'm sure that there are plenty of people's lives that might be easier if this particular mage had been clipped, in the manner of speaking. But then again, if she were destined for some kind of great thing and we cut that short, I think about that. It's one of the things that I've used to justify why I did it in my own head. Now I'm not so sure that it was worth justifying.
Sometimes hasty decisions made for the right reasons are more dangerous than planned acts of maliciousness.
You know, you said before that I was destined to suffer. And aside from one or two unique instances, most of the suffering that I've gone through has come from my own decisions. And I just. Where am I going wrong, Rose?
There, I suppose I would describe you as a loose thread, where you're attempting to work your own way out into the weaving with no foresight as to the rest of the pattern. Perhaps you are trying to straighten it out, help other threads along, but in doing so, taking yourself widely off course to a point that may very well be dangerous to yourself and all threads that you've intersected. Sometimes what may need to be done is to pull that thread, rethread it with a new needle, find it a different place.
And how do I do that?
In a way that is just as impossible as it sounds. If you're seeking order, the kind of guidance and rigidity that joining our tradition would demand, I'm not going to lie to you and say it will be easy. I'm not going to lie to you and say that it'll be a short process, and I won't lie to you in saying that there's a guarantee it'll work. I will tell you there is a chance. I will tell you it can be done. It may take a long time, but that's what I can offer.
What does it entail?
The mistakes made by Maggie Keller on this path may very well damn her to suffering. To put it lightly, you would need to kill yourself.
She looks down at her wrists and runs her hand over the scars. I feel like that has more metaphysical overtones to it than, and she holds up her arm, than traditional means.
It does. I'm not telling you to remove yourself from this cycle of incarnation. I'm telling you that if you want a brand new path, it may very well entail wiping away most of who Maggie Keller is.
There are people I could go to and ask about what they saw Maggie Keller as, but I wouldn't trust their opinions to not be biased,
The,
especially
out-
if they knew.
the
If they,
outside view of who Maggie is equally as important as the inside view. They are both different sides of the same whole.
my worry is that those that see me, those whose opinions I would gather, would let bias rule it, and not necessarily for the wrong I've done. I could actually almost guarantee those would be more honest than anyone else's answer. But friends I have, if they knew what I was what this plan entailed, this path. I don't know if they would fully support it or if they would say things to try and arc me away from it.
Think that gathering the outside view of who you are from as many people as you can may very well help you make a decision as to what parts of that identity you need to cut away before you can begin building anew.
All right, then. I started here months ago. You've gotten to know me over that time. You've had to deal with me over that time. What do you see?
I see proof that infinite freedom and possibility requires equally strong guidance. I think a large amount of your morals are in check, but your decision making needs a bit of work. A more solid code of conduct to go with a code of honor, if you will. It's easy to fool yourself into thinking that you're doing the right thing when you only see a small thread of the picture.
We're
And
all the we're all the heroes of our own stories.
I don't believe your intentions are malicious, but your actions are what people see. And your actions are what affect this world. I've shown you many of our texts on morality, but there's one set of laws that we do follow rigidly, more so than conjecture and theory can give you.
You know I enjoy your lessons.
If you're dead set on becoming one of us, I'll give you the laws. But as with anything specific to ours, they remain with ours.
The texts that you have given me that specifically relate to your tradition, they paint the picture that one might expect, and many that ones don't really see. I never would have equated the Euthanatos with mercy before, or compassion.
Fate is not always cruel. And what may be cruelty to one is mercy to another. We simply do as fate demands us.
I know that I can see the wheel now, and I just don't understand it fully. But I know I could go elsewhere and probably have an easier time. And given the things that I've been through up to this point, I don't think that would do me any real lasting good.
There's often more than one solution to a problem. There may be others who could help you just as effectively as we can. But the path you choose is your own, and there's something to be merited for choosing the difficult path.
She gives a bit of a smile at that. It's not a giddy one, just more of a resignation. And she gives just a simple nod. I said before that I was committed, and I haven't altered from that. If you're willing to teach me these laws, I will listen and do my best to follow them.
The Chidona. Or, if you want to get more formal, the Chakradama Samhita. If you'd like to speak English, we normally call them the eight spokes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Shelby, but that Chakravanti and the Chakradama, that is Hindi?
It is Hindi. The Chakradharma Samhita is
Mm-hmm.
Hindi for the eight-spoked wheel of the law.
Then Maggie will.
I can write it in the sidebar if you'd like.
Yeah, no. I've seen it before. I'm just trying to remember the exact writing of it, but she will. She'll respond in Hindi, and she'll just simply say, "Please continue."
In response to her apparent comfort with Hindi, Rose will actually continue in Hindi as well. Before the eyes of heaven, we write this code. We, who know the dance of life and death, and who have been chosen to guard the wheel of the world, do avow before all present powers that this is our law, to be held sacred forever. And to look at Maggie as if she's expecting her to repeat it.
What page is this on? So I can actually read along.
In the PDF, it is page 28, I believe.
All right.
27 in the book.
That was a long way away. So she will repeat the preamble. Before the eyes of heaven, we write this code. We who know the dance of life and death, and who have been chosen to guard the wheel of the world, do avow before all present powers that this is our law, to be held sacred forever.
We testify to the existence of a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that pervades the cosmos with its rhythm. We testify that souls of humankind and all animate beings are conducted through this cycle towards an eventual end. We testify that this cycle is the law of the universe. We swear to support this cycle and prevent its stagnation or corruption.
Maggie sort of sits up a bit more rigidly in her chair and begins slowly. We testify to the existence of a cycle of birth, death, and rebirth that pervades the cosmos with its rhythm. And she continues on.
We believe in the fundamental unity of all that exists, and that creation springs from one original source to which it will return. We further state that all animate beings carry within them the pure seed of this original source, no matter how corrupt their outer shell may be.
That gives her a bit of pause as she mulls things over in her head. A few names come to mind, and she simply repeats, "We believe in the fundamental unity of all that exists, and that creation springs from one original source to which it will return. We further state that all animate beings carry within them the pure seed of this original source, no matter how corrupt their outer shell may be."
We avow that decay and entropy are part of the natural cycle, and that all things must eventually decay to dust so as to return to the womb of the universe. We accept this as part of our existence, and vow that we shall not cause ourselves undue pain in a futile battle with this principle. Rather, we shall harness the endless wheel of time and the secret web of fate as our allies in guarding the structure of the universe.
This one sort of hits a chord with her, and before her rebirth back in the hospital, this one might have cut deep, but given that she allowed herself to depart from what she was hanging on to in that respect, she is able to proceed on with little more than a swallowing of a lump in her throat. We avow that decay and entropy are part of the natural cycle, and that all things must eventually decay to dust so as to return to the womb of the universe. We accept this part of our existence and vow that we shall not cause ourselves undue pain in a futile battle with this principle. Rather, we shall harness the endless wheel of time and the secret web of fate as our allies in guarding the structure of the universe.
We have been given our insight and power for a purpose, to be guardians of humankind and of the world. This is our sacred duty from which we still stray only upon pain of death and the loss of our souls. We will guard the wheel and those caught in its thrall, regardless of the danger to our mortal existences or the suffering it may cause us.
As Maggie repeats this after Rose, there's a part of her that seems to agree with this wholeheartedly. That this might have been what her avatar spoke of when speaking to fight against the abuses of those in power. So when she repeats this one, she actually comes through it with sort of a confidence.
One cannot remain pure without being controlled of the senses and the spirit. Hence, we vow to always seek our own spiritual betterment. We shall practice the rites, sing the sacred songs, and subject ourselves to trials to strengthen the body and will. We will resist the temptations of desire, no matter the form in which they come to us.
Maggie looks up to Rose. How do you explain this one? I understand the words, but what does it mean to you?
It would mean disavowing excess, disavowing even things you may want more than anything else, in sacrifice to ensuring the wheel continues to turn. It means accepting that what you have to do may not line up with what you want.
Does it mean that we give up on all worldly delights, any connections with others?
Pleasure, connection, they're parts of the human experience, but they don't control you. They are not your duty. To avoid, to deprive yourself of happiness, of connection to others, of pleasure, is also a step in the wrong direction. To accept it as a part of your experience, but know when it is right to accept it and when it is right to deny it, are signs of wisdom. We do not flagellate ourselves thinking that it helps serve the wheel. We're disciplined.
One cannot remain pure without being controlled of the senses and the spirit. Hence, we vow to always seek our own spiritual betterment. We shall practice the rites, sing the sacred songs, and subject ourselves to trials to strengthen the body and will. We will resist the temptations of desire, no matter the form in which they come to us.
It is impossible for us to complete our duty if we close our hearts to the suffering in the world around us. To attempt such would be to open our doors to corruption and evil. Thus, we must never close our eyes to the pain of others, or to the pain our own actions cause.
Maggie looks unnerved at that, and she sits back, and in her own head, she mulls it over. She thinks about possibly consulting with Tara and Harper, but given that she is not 100% sure that they aren't figments of her imagination, she closes her eyes for a moment and just simply calls out the name Diana in her own mind.
She will feel the presence of her avatar there.
You've been with me through all of this. You've seen the things I've done. What do I say to Ken? What do I say to Naomi? What do I say to that man that I racked the brain of to make sure that they felt in, infinitely small back at that festival that almost became a riot?
Penitence is your own duty. To apologize means little. They may never accept an apology. Think less on what you have to say and more on what you have to do.
What do you think I should do? I won't omit your opinion on this. I know I have done in the past, but that hasn't really gotten us anywhere, has it?
What would you consider justice for them?
For Ken, Ken is reasonable enough that if I did apologize to him, he could see it for what it is, though it might not ever be enough for him. I know that he despises me, and the only way I could see making amends would be to ensure that he doesn't have to endure a monstrous presence anymore. Whether that means me divorcing myself from the chantry or becoming less of a monster in his eyes. Maybe they go hand in hand, I don't know. As far as that man at the festival goes, his prison sentence, whatever it might have been, for assaulting someone, was a direct result of something I did. But at the same time, he also was looking for a fight and may have gotten into one with a police officer, which would have damned him more. Maybe helping him in some way, or helping his family. And as for Naomi, I don't know what would work at that point. Maybe letting her stab me.
There's no response from the presence in your head. It seems content with just allowing you to contemplate these answers yourself.
Maggie looks up at Rose. It is impossible for us to complete our duty. If we close our hearts to the suffering of the world around us, to attempt such would be to open our doors to corruption and evil. Thus, we must never close our eyes to the pain of others, or to the pain of pain our own actions cause.
Since action done for pleasure and one's own gain carries with it always the danger of corruption, we shall forego such action. Our duty shall be done in the name of the cosmos and offered in sacrifice to the cosmos. We shall eschew action that is created purely by our desires, for such action would threaten our souls and our duties.
Before, when you mentioned the sadhana, this seems almost to contradict that.
Is there a difference between allowing yourself to feel pleasure and doing things solely for the purpose of pleasure?
No, but it does seem like a very slippery slope.
She smiles a bit. I did not say these laws were easy to follow.
I think I take your meaning on that. And Maggie recites the Tyaga vow back to Rose.
One cannot properly enter a new life without a death, and one cannot serve that which one does not understand. All those who care to join our number, as part of their rite of entry, before they receive their names or their mantras or their sacred tools, must walk on the other side of life. They must lay curled within the belly of death and return to us before we will count them in our number.
I told you before that I experienced death. I told you about what I encountered when I was there. The demon.
She nods.
Would this be different?
What this spoke is referring to is a specific ritual. Your brush with death offered you insight. It offered you an experience that few outside of our number can boast. But they are different. To be counted among us, you very well will have to revisit that place. This time, hopefully with greater understanding, greater purpose.
She looks down at her right wrist and sort of runs her thumb back and forth over it a few times and sort of gives a shiver. How frightened were you when you went through it the first time?
I was terrified that I would never come back.
If the Chakravanti required you to go through it again, would you without that same terror?
Yes.
Why would you lack the fear now that you had before?
When I was young, serving the wheel and being a euthanatos was largely theory. There's a lot that simply teaching cannot give you, that you need genuine experience to truly come to understand. When I was young, saying that even my death could serve a purpose, it sounded true. I believed it. But genuinely relinquishing fear of death, it's not the same.
I can think about it and I can rationalize it well enough in my own mind that I know what I face there will not be the same as it was before. I've grown since then.
If anything, you will be stepping into the lands of death more prepared than any of us. I can't say that it'll be any easier, but perhaps there'll be some merit there.
Maggie looks a bit surprised that Rose would say that, and given what she's experienced with Rose over the past couple months, I'm guessing that's no. Her saying that Maggie would be more prepared than most is not something that's said hollow in a hollow manner.
No. You will know from your time tutoring under Rose, even the slightest compliment is extremely rare, and she doesn't soften any blows or try to make things nice.
I will say then her expression is one that is about as contained as this sort of post isolation Maggie can be, with the expression of Senpai has noticed me. And she will repeat the final vow of the Dishka.
Rose will nod. These are the rules, the laws that each and every one of us lives by. The last bit of parting wisdom I can give you she shakes her head a bit. This will sound cliche, but famous quotes are famous for a reason. And she will take a deep breath. See. Trying to find it in the language. Oh, here we go. Qianli, Xixing, Xiyu, Zujia, spoken by philosopher Laozi. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You have taken one step.
I will try to take more according to these principles and see where they bring me.
Rose nods. Then I would say you have a lot to mull over. In interest of not overloading you, consider this lesson complete.
She nods and sort of runs her hand back through her hair, stands up. And as she goes to the door, she pauses and just looks back. I have been curious for a little while now, especially after our conversation here today, this lesson.
Hmm.
What do you do for fun?
She smiles a bit. Occasionally, on Sunday, I allow myself to play cards with a few friends.
Hmm. Maggie just kind of smiles and sort of mulls it over and then responds back in Hindi. That makes an odd amount of sense.
We're duty bound. We're strict. We have a grim purpose. But it's not all despair, seriousness, and all of this. The greatest thing one of us can learn is to enjoy the little things.
I, while I'm figuring out what parts of me, I figure out how others view me. And if what you say is true needs to be done. There is one request I have, and that is to accompany you or another member of this chantry and see you carry out your duties, what it actually means to be Thanatos. If that's not overstepping my bounds, that is.
I'd say take your time. There will be plenty of that. But don't rush into it. You retain much more by taking your time and allowing yourself to learn than you do by attempting to consume all the knowledge you can.
No, I trust that if you agreed to that, it would be when I'm ready to see it. But it is something that I would like to see before I made any major leaps.
She nods.
And she again offers a slight bow and then steps out of the office and makes her way back down the hall.
I believe that would be a good point to end our scene.
I agree. Thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. Thank you, STs, for STing. We will see you all again very soon.